So, welcome back students. Today we are going to start our last continent, that is Australia. Till now we have completed all the continents: Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, and now this is our last continent, Australia. So let's begin with the Australia. So like we cleared our confusion regarding America, about Latin America, Hispanic America, Central America. Similarly, many students have confusion regarding Australia, whether Australia is a country or it's a continent. So let's clear our confusion today. So let's first see Australia as a country. So you can see a map of Australia having yellow color, So this is the country of Australia. The southern part, here you can see one island. It's called as Tasmania, and Tasmania is a part of Australia. So when you are talking about Australia as a country, so this is a country, Australia, which contains this big island and over this small island. So this is Australia. And then when you say Australia as a continent, then here we also include the country of New Zealand. Fine. So we also include the country of New Zealand. Then what is Oceania then? Oceania. So the concept of Oceania is a name of a region. Oceania is not a continent. Instead, Oceania is a region which consists of numerous islands which are located in the Pacific Ocean. So here you can see the islands in the Pacific Ocean, and they have been classified into three major parts. The first one is Micronesia, then we have Melanesia, and then we have Polynesia. So Polynesia is a region, Micronesia is a region having few countries, and there are many islands which are governed by the superpowers of the world. Some islands are governed by USA, some islands are governed by UK, and some islands are also governed by Australia and United Kingdom. Okay, so we'll see some of the countries associated with this part of the world. So as such, these island nations, they do not belong to any of the continent. So we have a 7-continent model, right? We started, the largest continent is Asia, then Africa, by area I'm talking about. So the first continent is Asia in terms of area. Then the second largest continent is Africa. Then we have North America, then South America. Then we have the continent of Antarctica, then Europe, and then Australia. So these islands, so they felt excluded. So to include them in the world map, we have arranged this kind of structure. We have classified these islands into small pockets, and then we have given a name Oceania. So Oceania contains Micronesia, Polynesia, Melanesia, and Australasia. So when I say Australasia, I mean the country of Australia plus the country of New Zealand. So Australasia includes the country of Australia and New Zealand, and together with Micronesia, Polynesia, Melanesia, and Australasia, this region is called as Oceania. So I hope the confusion regarding Australia as a country, Australia as a continent, and Australasia and the entire Oceania is cleared. So now we will see the some of the few countries related to the Micronesia. So the countries called Palau, Kiribati, Marshall Islands. So these are independent countries. Again, there are many small islands like Caroline Islands are there, Marshall Islands are there, Kiribati, and Mariana Islands. So some of these islands are not independent nation. So these are the three independent nations in the Micronesia: Palau, Kiribati, Marshall Islands. And similarly, in Polynesia, we have Hawaii Islands. So you know, Hawaii is not an independent country. Instead, it is the smallest state of United States of America. Similarly, we have Easter Islands over here, New Zealand, which is a country, Samoa, which is a country, Tonga, which is a country, Tuvalu, and Cook Islands. So these islands make Polynesia. So here the Polynesia. So what questions you can expect? So they will just ask the questions from the world geography are very easy. So they can ask you the names. They will tell you the Micronesia, Polynesia are located in which ocean. So they will give you option Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Arctic Ocean. So you just have to remember that these group of islands, they are associated with the Pacific Ocean. Then out of these three, which is the largest in area? So Polynesia, you can see Polynesia is largest in area. Then Micronesia is having the smallest area. Then they can ask you which of the following countries are a part of Australasia. So at that time you should remember the country of Australia and New Zealand. Australia and New Zealand are part of this Australasia region. Australasia is not a continent, right? Then they can ask you. So this will be very difficult question that they can ask you the match the pair. Polynesia. They will give you some of the islands like Papua New Guinea, then Fiji, Vanuatu, and they will ask you to match the regions and associated islands. So what I can suggest you, just remember the important countries like while studying the Indonesia, while studying the Southeast Asia, we studied Indonesia in detail, and at that time what we saw the island of New Guinea has been divided into two parts and one country, that is Papua New Guinea. So we saw at that time Papua New Guinea is a part of Melanesia. So just remember Papua New Guinea is there in the country of Fiji. So it's Fiji is famous, right? So we can just have remember this fact that Fiji, Papua New Guinea belong to Melanesia, and then some of the islands of Marshall Islands, Kiribati Islands belong to Micronesia, then Hawaii Islands belong to Polynesia, then we have over here Tonga Islands, Samoa Islands, Tuvalu Islands, and their Cook Islands are there. So these islands, they belong to Polynesia, and we have Australia and New Zealand. So in this lecture, we will study in detail the continent of Australia, country, New Zealand in detail. So I hope your confusion is clear now. Just try to remember the important countries from each region so that it will be easier for you to eliminate in the examination, to eliminate the options in the examinations. Next. So this is the political map of Australia. As you can see, the Australia is the most biodiverse continent, you can say. We have endemic species koala, then we have kangaroos over here, so which are endemic to this region. So this is the country of Australia, which includes these states. Australia includes, so we will see now the political map. So here we have Western Australia. So like India has 28 states, so like we have here provinces, or you can call it as a states or regions. So here in the western part there is Western Australia, then in the northern part we have Northern Territory, then South Australia, then here New South Wales. So you can remember Wales is a part of Great Britain. So this Australia was colonized by United Kingdom. So the name, you can see the resemblance over here, New South Wales. Then here we have Victoria, here we have Queensland, South Australia, Northern Territory, Western Australia and Tasmania. So these are the states of the country Australia. So how many states are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 states of Australia. So they can ask you the capital of each region. You can because there is no such physiography as such in the continent of Australia. It's the smallest continent, right? So they can ask you the capitals. So here you can see the capital of Queensland is Brisbane. The capital of New South Wales is Sydney. Then here is country capital Canberra. Then here Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth. So clockwise you can remember like PHD, Perth, then Darwin, then BSC, that is Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra and MA. So this is a small mnemonic you can remember to remember the cities in a clockwise fashion of the Australia continent, Australia country. So which are the countries? Perth, then Darwin, then Brisbane, then Sydney, then Canberra, then Melbourne and Adelaide. So all these countries are very famous for their cricket grounds, right? So you can remember the cities, and the capital of Tasmania is Hobart. So in PhD, H stands for, you can remember, H is Hobart. So I hope the the cities are clear. Now let's see the Australia. So Australia is the seventh largest continent in the world, and Australia as a country is the sixth largest in terms of area. So the question is Australia continent. So it's the seventh largest continent. That is the smallest continent in the world when we are following the seven continental model theory. Then Australia as a country is sixth. So which is the seventh largest country in the world? So you know that's India, right? Fifth largest we saw in the South America in our South American lecture, that's Brazil. So fifth is Brazil, sixth is Australia, seventh is India. Then the important feature of Australia is the Tropic of Capricorn passes almost from middle of the Australia, and it divides the country Australia into two parts. So that's a fact we can remember. A question can be asked: which of the following continents from which of the following continents the Tropic of Capricorn passes? So the continent of Australia, then continent of Africa, and the South American continent. So from these three continents, the Tropic of Capricorn passes. Next, now we will see the physical map of the Australian continent. We will first see important seas, important straits, and the major landscapes into it. So from start you can Cape York Peninsula. So I told you the definition of peninsula, that is peninsula is surrounded by water from three sides. So this part is called as Cape York Peninsula. Cape York Peninsula. Cape York Peninsula. So that Cape York Peninsula is surrounded by Gulf of Carpentaria, Coral Sea, and we have Arafura Sea over here. So Cape York Peninsula is surrounded by water from three sides in the form of in north we have Arafura Sea, in the east we have Coral Sea, and to the west we have Gulf of Carpentaria. So next, so we saw about Coral Sea, then Tasman Sea. So Tasman Sea is present between Australia and New Zealand. Over here you can see. Between Australia and New Zealand there is a body of sea, and that sea is known as Tasman Sea. So a very important question is generated here. Very important question, that Tasman Sea separates which of the two countries? So it separates Australia and New Zealand. Then in the northwest we have Timor Sea. Timor Sea separates, this is the island of Timor, right? We saw again Timor Island is divided into two parts. In the Southeast Asia part we saw the Timor Islands is separated into two parts. The western part is a part of Indonesia, while the eastern part is a separate country called as East Timor. The capital is Delhi, and we also saw East Timor is the only Asian country which is located entirely in the southern hemisphere, which is situated entirely below the equator. So this is Timor Islands, and between Timor Islands and Australia we have Timor Sea. Okay, then here in the western part of Australia we have Indian Ocean, and the eastern part, so Coral Sea and Tasman Sea are both part of our Pacific Ocean. So here we have Pacific Ocean. Alright, so Pacific Ocean has two marginal seas, Coral Seas and Tasman Sea, and in the south direction here we have the Great Australian Bight. That's a kind of gulf or bay, you can say, Great Australian Bight. Next, so we completed Timor Sea, Arafura Sea, Gulf of Carpentaria, Great Australian Bight. Now let's move for the straits. So which are the two important straits in the Australia? So Torres Strait. This is Torres Strait. So Torres Strait. Torres Straits connect Arafura Sea and Coral Sea. Torres Strait connects Arafura Sea and Coral Sea. Also, it separates Papua New Guinea country and Australia, or in the broader perspective, you can see Torres Strait separates the continent of Asia from the continent of Australia. So, Torres Strait is very important. Then here you can see a passage of water connecting Great Australian Bight to the Tasman Sea, and this strait is called as Bass Strait. So Bass Strait connects Tasman Sea with the Great Australian Bight, or you can say Bass Strait separates Tasmania from the mainland Australia. Tasmania is a part of Australia only, with capital Hobart. So we saw the important capitals, important cities in the in the clockwise direction: PhD, BSc, MA. Then we saw the marginal seas surrounded by the continent of Australia. Then we covered important straits. Now let's move ahead. What we have? So we have now physical map. So let's go into the interior of the continent of Australia. So here we have. So in Australia, now we will cover mountain ranges, then peaks, then the river basins, deserts, rivers and lakes, and some regions in the Australian continent. So first we will move from eastern direction to the western direction. So as such, broadly you can divide the continent of Australia into three parts. The first part you can see this eastern part, which is the easternmost part. So here in the easternmost part, we have a great dividing range. We have a long mountain range. The name is Great Dividing Range. Great Dividing Range. Fine. So there are, again, we are not going in detail because UPSC will not ask you in detail. They will focus on mainly Indian mountains. So here only the names are important. Their relative location is important. So we will not go in detail. So there is a great dividing range in the Australia. In the southern part, here, somewhere here, we have another mountain range that's called as Australian Alps. It is called as Australian Alps. So Australian Alps are present in the southern direction, and in that Australian Alps, we have one peak. That peak is the highest peak of Australia, and the name is Mount Kosciuszko. Mount Kosciuszko. So Mount Kosciuszko is the highest peak in the Australian country. Okay. Then we have McDonnell Range. So McDonnell Range we have somewhere here in the middle. So McDonnell Range is there. So not all mountain ranges, there are n number of mountain ranges in the Australia, but not all are important. So we are covering only the important mountain ranges. Then we covered Australian Alps, Darling Range. So in the extreme southwest direction, here somewhere here we have a mountain range with a name called as Darling Mountains. We have Darling Mountain Ranges. Fine. Then Darling Mountain Range, McDonnell Mountain Range, Great Dividing Range, and Australian Alps. And in Australian Alps, we have highest peak of Australia, that is Mount Kosciuszko. So Mount Kosciuszko is important from exam perspective. So we covered all the mountain ranges. We covered this Mount Kosciuszko. Then let's move further westward. We have started from east. Let's go interior. So here in this region, you can see the many rivers are present in this region. So this region is called as Great Artesian Basin. Great Artesian Basin. So Great Artesian Basin, we will study about it in detail in next slide. So just remember the location, that Great Artesian Basin is situated to the west of Great Dividing Range, and it is a kind of lowland. So rivers are flowing from the Great Dividing Range. They are coming here and they are merging the southern Great Australian Bight. Then Australia is as such, it is a semi-arid country. There are n number of deserts in the Australia. So we will cover the important deserts. So here we have Great Sandy Desert. Here we have Great Victoria Desert. In between we have Great Sandy Desert, Great Victoria Desert, Gibson Desert, and in the west of Great Artesian Basin, here there is Simpson Desert. Simpson Desert, Great Sandy Desert, Great Victoria Desert, and Gibson Desert. This is Gibson, this is Simpson. So you just have to remember the names and the associated continent, nothing much. So we covered all the important deserts in the Australia. Then now it's a time for rivers. So there are two important rivers. The longest river, the largest river in the Australia is River Murray River. So you can see the River Murray over here. It originates in the Australian Alps. It moves westward and then it discharges itself in the Great Australian Bights. And its tributary is, this is the tributary, its name is Darling River. So Murray is the longest river, or you can say the largest river, and Darling is its tributary. Then we have Lake Eyre. So this is Lake Eyre. Lake Eyre, and this is the largest freshwater lake in the continent of Australia. So Lake Eyre we covered. So you just have to remember the Lake Eyre, because in the examination they will ask you where is Lake Tonle Sap is located. So it's in the Indo-China Peninsula. So where is Lake Tana situated? So it's in the Africa. So likewise they will ask Lake Eyre. So it's associated with continent of Australia. Nothing much we have to study. Then Downs. So Downs is a region in the Australia where grasslands are formed, temperate grassland. So it's a temperate grassland region in the continent of Australia. So I hope it's all clear to you. Mountain ranges, then peaks, the regions associated with it, and the deserts and the rivers. Now let's move forward. Now the unique feature, the most important feature when I say Australia, so two pictures come into my mind. First is of kangaroo and the second is of Great Barrier Reef. So what is Great Barrier Reef? So Great Barrier Reef is the largest coral reef system in the world. It is the world's largest coral reef. World's largest coral reefs. Then its location. So in the examination they will ask you a question like this. Consider following statements regarding Great Barrier Reef, and then they will say the Great Barrier Reef is located in the suppose they will say Timor Sea or they will say Tasman Sea. So you must know that Great Barrier Reef, they are located in Coral Sea. They are located in Coral Sea off coast of Queensland. So we saw 7 islands, 7 states of Australia. So you must remember that they are located to the western side, to the eastern side of the state Queensland. Where is Queensland? I'll just show you the map again. So here is Queensland. So the Great Barrier Reef are located in the sea, in the Coral Sea, somewhere like here. So they are on the eastern side of the Queensland state. So they can confuse you between Victoria, New South Wales or Western Territory, Western Australia. So just remember it's present in the Coral Sea off coast of Queensland. And Coral Reef is the longest, it's also the longest coral reef in the world, covering almost 2,300 kilometers. So that's very long, right? Then it's also the world's biggest single structure made by living organisms. So it is the biggest single structure made by the living organism. So you can like this is a geographical phenomenon. Only the two living creatures, corals and mangroves. So they are able to form lands, because coral, they form islands. We know our islands of Lecture-03. So they are formed entirely by corals. Similarly, in Sundarbans, the mangroves, they collect the deposits deposited by the rivers. So mangroves and corals are only the two living organisms which are able to create new land. Then UNESCO World Heritage Site. So it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The coral reefs have a UNESCO World Heritage Site tag. So this is about Great Barrier Reef. This is a picture, beautiful picture of Great Barrier Reef. which can be also seen from our outer space. So that is so large and so long. Then now we will talk about Great Artesian Basin. So Great Artesian Basin is located to the west of Great Dividing Range. It is a kind of lowland in the eastern part of Australia. What is Great Artesian Basin? So this is a diagram of aquifer. This is a diagram of aquifer. So what happens here? You can see the surface water in the form of rivers and lakes. But you will be astonished to know that in the world, apart from the ocean water and apart from the Antarctica, the frozen water, largest amount of fresh water is present in the groundwater. So here, so this is Artesian aquifer, and in the Australia we have Great Artesian Basin. So that is the largest aquifer in the world. The water is present in the underground. So here you can see the diagram. This is the land and the water, it recharge area for the artesian well. So water, it drains in the ground, and when you dug a bore well or when you dug an artesian well, the water comes out. So this is the rough diagram of an artesian basin, and you just have to remember the largest artesian basin is in the Australia and it's present in the eastern part of Australia. So largest aquifer system in the world. Next, now we will see the important features, the Uluru Mountains. So you must have seen this image. This mountain is made up of sandstone. It is in geography, we call this mountain as Inselberg. We call this mountain as Inselberg. It is a example of relic mountains due to the weathering phenomenon. So this is made up of sandstone. So it shows various color in different time of the day. For example, in the dawn, it will show different current. In the afternoon, it will show different current due to its sandstone structure. So, Uluru Mountains are present in the Northern Territory of Australia. It's also called as Ayers Rock. In local languages, the name is Uluru, but officially it's recorded as Ayers Rock, and it is an example of Inselberg. Then its height is 863 meter, and it's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this is Uluru Mountains, very famous mountains, very touristy destination, you can say, after Great Barrier Reef. Surrounding it, it's all plain area, and suddenly, abruptly, this mountain is there, and it is heavily eroded mountain. So you can see this structure. So it's Uluru Mountain. Then what we have next? So now let's talk about New Zealand. So Australasia includes what? Australia plus New Zealand. Australasia, it includes Australia plus New Zealand. This is Australasia. So we saw Tasman Sea between Australia and New Zealand, and this is Bass Strait. So let's focus now on the country called as New Zealand. So New Zealand. So let's first cover the islands of the New Zealand, then important straits. So New Zealand, again, it's made up of many islands, hundreds of islands, but we will focus only on three major islands. The largest island of the New Zealand is South Island. Then we have North Island. This is North Island, and then somewhere here we have a small island called as Stewart Island. Here we have a small island called as Stewart Island. Again, there are hundreds of islands, so we are not concerned about it. So just remember South Island, North Island. The capital of New Zealand is Wellington, and it's located in the southern part of the North Island. This is Wellington. It's located on the North Island. Similarly, the most populous city of New Zealand is Auckland, and Auckland is present again in the North Island. In the South Island, we have a city called as Christchurch. Again, while watching cricket, you must have seen these beautiful cities and a beautiful nature in the movie Kahona Pare. So the country has been recorded in the beautiful valleys of the New Zealand. So we will focus from the exam perspective. So island we covered, the North Island, the South Islands and the Stewart Islands. So we covered all these islands. Then straits. So important strait, we covered Torres Strait between New Guinea and Australia, Bass Strait between Australia and Tasmania. So now here you can see a passage of water, a small passage of water connecting, dividing this North Island and South Island, and this strait is called as Cook Strait. Cook Strait. So Cook was an explorer. Similarly, Tasman was an explorer who first we can say discovered the continent of Australia. Captain Tasman, then Captain Cook. So these are the name of the explorer. So in their honor, the straits are named from that name, by their name. So Cook Strait, and another strait over here you can see the passage. Let's call as Fox Strait. Fox Strait. So North Island, South Island, Stewart Island, North Island and South Island, they are divided by Cook Strait, and between South and Stewart Island we have Fox Strait. So straits over. Then cities, I just talked Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch. Again there are many cities, but we will just focus on the important cities. Then the mountain ranges. The mountain ranges over here in Australia we have Australian Alps, and the original Alps are in the European continent. And as Europe, the European powers, they colonized these nations, so they have used the same names. That's why we have New South Wales. That's why we have Australian Alps. And here in the southern part of the New Zealand, we have Southern Alps. Also, a famous question, like important question can be there: is Southern Alps are located in which country? Southern Alps are located in which continent? So they can give you the option like South America. So you can say, yes, South. So you can mark South Alps is in the South America. So that's not correct. Correct answer will be Southern Alps are located in the southern island of the country New Zealand, in a continent Australia, which is in the Australasia region and which is a part of Oceania. Fine. Then the important tribe, these are called as the Aboriginals people or indigenous people. Aborigines in Australia. In India, what we call the people which have been inhabited in that region since millions of years, we call them as tribes, Adijivi or Adivasi. So likewise in Australia, they are known as Aboriginals, and the Aborigines tribes, Aborigines, that means indigenous people. They were present in these islands before they were colonized by the European power. So when I say Captain Cook or Captain Tasman, they explored, they discovered the Australia, I mean before them, the people inhabiting the regions of Australia and New Zealand, so they are now called as Aborigines. So the famous tribe or the famous group of people, famous ethnic people in the New Zealand is called as Maori. So their dance is famous. Maori is also the official language of the New Zealand. There are three official languages: English, obviously. There is Maori language and there is sign language. So sign language is also a national language of the country New Zealand. So Maori is associated with the New Zealand. So in the Magic Pair, they have asked many times the regions and the tribes associated in the world geography. So you can remember Maori are associated with New Zealand. So this is the picture. So these are the pictures of the Maori tribes. Their home. This is called as totem. This is called as totem. A beautiful home. Their dance is very famous. You can search on YouTube the dance of Maori. It's very violent. It's very aggressive. Next, the concept of Zealandia. So recently, in the year 2015-2016, a new study was conducted in the around New Zealand region, and the scientists have found that there is a different island apart from Australia. It's called as New Zealand. 94% of that continent, Zealandia, has been submerged under the water. Only the part of New Zealand and some islands over here, the New Caledonia, are above water. So only this part, the North Island, South Island, Stewart Island, and the New Caledonia, only this part of this continent are above the surface. Remaining entire is below water. So this new continent is called as Zealandia. But again, dispute is going on. So we are not following Zealandia as a separate continent. We are considering only the 7-continent model. So you just have to remember Zealandia is associated with New Zealand. So it's present between Tasman Sea and Pacific Ocean. This is Zealandia. This entire region is Zealandia, and this is submerged below water. So that's all you can remember. Then we have completed the geography. We have completed entire geography, physical geography, and political geography of Australia. We saw 7 great things about Australia. We saw Great Barrier Reef, Great Dividing Range, Great Artesian Basin, Great Sandy Desert, Great Victorian Desert, and Great Australian Bight. Right. So after that, we will now go to a organization, as we are following this ritual from Asia. In Asia, we saw SAARC, SCO, Gulf Cooperation Council. So likewise, now we will see the Quad. So what are Quad? So Quad is basically a quadrilateral security dialogue which was initiated by Shinzo Abe. Quadrilateral security dialogue. So which was initiated by Shinzo Abe. Shinzo Abe was the president of or prime minister of Japan. So he initiated this dialogue, and 4 countries are a part of Quad: Japan, USA, Australia, and India. So you can observe that all these countries are democracies. USA, the oldest democracy. India, the largest democracy. Japan. In Japan, we have a monarch, but that's a different story. They follow the democracy. And in Australia, we have a federal democracy. So all the democratic countries, they came together and to contain the influence of China. So they have formed a grouping that's called as Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, and it's initiated by Shinzo Abe in the year 2007. So just remember the Quad countries. The very easy question: how many? Which of the following countries are part of Quad? So simple question they can ask you. So Quad and the military alliance between these 4 democratic nations. The purpose, the main purpose was to contain the influence, the aggressive nature of the China. So thank you. In next lecture, we will see about world map. Today we completed all the continents. Antarctica is not that important from exam perspective, and there is not much to say about Australia, the Antarctica. So we completed all the continents, all the 6 major continents. Now, in the next lecture will be a revision of all the lectures. We will focus mainly on the oceans and the continents. So we will give a broad perspective about world map. Thank you.